Welcome to the ATA Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Baird, and you're listening to Inside Specialization, our series on the what, why, and how of specializing in a specific field of translation or interpreting. In each episode, members of ATA's Professional Development Committee will interview translation and interpreting specialists. They'll ask about what the work entails, what skills are needed, the pros and cons, and so much more. The goal is to showcase the variety of career paths in translation and interpreting and help working professionals and students understand what's out there, how they can get started, and what they need to succeed. Specialization is arguably the best way to strengthen your translation and interpreting business and stand out from the crowd. We're hoping to bring you one episode a month, and we hope you'll join us on this informative journey. This podcast is brought to you by the American Translators Association. If you'd like to know more about ATA, we'll have some information at the end of the show. All right, now over to the PD Committee and this edition of Inside Specialization.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the ATA Podcast Specialization Series, a special collaboration between the ATA Podcast and ATA's Professional Development Program. I'm Adam Sachs, and I am a member of ATA's Professional Development Committee. We are very excited to bring you this episode where we will hear about translation of corporate and internal communications from Marita Propato. Marita Propato is an English and Spanish conference interpreter, technical, literary, and legal translator, and college professor from Buenos Aires, Argentina. She has 2 ATA certifications and is a member of the Sworn Translators Association of Buenos Aires. She's also a former president of the Argentine Association of Translators and Interpreters. She's vice chair of the Latin America Regional Center of the International Federation of Translators. She has also been the lead interpreter at the 2018 Buenos Aires Youth Olympic Games. With more than 30 years of experience in a variety of translation and interpretation fields, her passions are transcreation, facilitating inclusion through communication, and contributing to build a sustainable and relevant profession. As a translator, Marita has a range of specializations. She has provided continued support to the public affairs and internal communications departments of prominent multinationals in the information technology, consumer products, pharmaceutical, and banking industries, helping meet their day-to-day communication needs with internal and external stakeholders. And partnering with executives in these corporate departments, she has specialized in the language of crisis management toolkits, press releases, internal memos, corporate social responsibility efforts, and community-oriented actions, teaming with clients and speaking their language to help them succeed. Welcome, Marita. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Adam. Thank you for having me in this edition of the podcast.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. So can you describe your background to us and tell us how you have carved out your niche as a translator and interpreter over the past 30 years?
Yes, of course. Well, I started many years ago when I was a fresh graduate from translation school in Buenos Aires. And I started out translating for a large multinational company in the IT industry. And the translations I received or I was commissioned to provide had to do with news articles about the CEO, interviews, and also some internal communications materials. And I found myself at ease working with these kinds of materials. We translators are intercultural mediators. We help people communicate. We help, bridge the language divide. And I felt very much at ease working for this area of such a large company in the IT sector. This in turn led to other assignments as an interpreter. Luckily, I was trained as an interpreter as well, so I didn't hesitate to join meetings when they needed live interpretation, and I was able to develop my simultaneous and consecutive interpreting skills. Some of the meetings I was called to assist with were also in the area of internal communications and public affairs.
Okay, very interesting. And your list of clients and credentials seems so comprehensive at first glance. Like your clients range from the International Olympic Committee to former President Clinton, and you've got multiple degrees and leadership roles. Can you tell us a bit about the through line you see within your work and how you have approached some of these clients with the type of value you can bring to their internal communications?
Yes, it's all about speaking the client's language in the end. Once you start working for a new client, you get a feel of what their priorities are, what their purpose, their mission, their values, and you need to really understand this in order to make a meaningful contribution. When you're aligned with the client's goals, it makes the task so much easier because sometimes you are under a lot of pressure for time, large volumes, and sometimes you get rush jobs and you need to be prepared to respond in, very fast and with high quality. So I believe that training is essential, education is essential, and the ability to take on new challenges, also understanding your own limitations, and having perhaps a group of colleagues you can resort to when you cannot take an assignment on your own. I have been coordinating large pools of translators or interpreters, and it's great to work as a team as well. As to my leadership roles in associations, well, I always felt I had to give back to our community to make my contribution. I love working with colleagues in volunteer positions, in translators associations, in the International Federation of Translators. I think that we learn a lot by doing volunteering work, and we also feel that our contributions count to help others who are perhaps starting in the profession and need orientation or mentoring, or, well, just to help with association work, which is so important because associations fulfill a very important role for our profession.
That's great. So talking about you mentioned how you considered training and education to be some of the most important things for getting to where you are. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit about some of the important building blocks to what have gotten you to where you are now, be it some of your education, volunteer roles, or certain clients who signed on with you that may have been unexpected at first?
Yes, of course. I first did a 4-year translation program in Lenguas Vivas Translation School in Buenos Aires, and I graduated as a literary, technical, and scientific translator. It provides you with a tremendous background in terms of the English language, Spanish language, and cultural affairs as well. And this gives you a very good positioning to be able to take on roles to assist clients, to be an advisor to clients in terms of language matters, for instance. I then went on to complete my education with a certified legal translation degree at another university in Buenos Aires, and also took a number of continued education courses offered by associations. I was also asked to teach courses in my areas of specialization, having to do with internal communications and, well, the IT field. There is always a lot of, there are many new developments in the field of information and communication technologies. So it is key to, stay abreast of the latest innovations. And well, I always enjoyed these activities. I believe that is key to enjoy and to love your profession and to love what you do. And, well, it's about multitasking, even though multitasking is not very popular today because we know it can have some impact on your performance and your mood. But, well, I was able to develop all these areas and fields of specialization, and I really enjoyed it all along the way.
Great. What are some of the challenges that you faced along the way?
Well, as I mentioned, when you work as a freelancer, even though you are outside the company, you need to understand the company's goals. And once you do that, you are able to speak the client's language, and you understand their needs. And you are able to work as a team, as another team member. And these companies, when they hire you for a number of months or even years, they count on you and they depend on you to provide advice. And some of them won't even send out a press release without the expert review of their translator. So it's wonderful when that happens. It's kind of magic because you are there to fulfill your role and you feel appreciated and you feel you have something to contribute. It's also very important to solicit feedback. And maybe that's one of the challenges. Some translators won't dare, ask clients to provide feedback, or they don't keep a channel of communication open with them. I always try to ask for feedback because sometimes we don't get any answer. So no news is good news. But some other times we really learn from what clients have to tell us. And I really appreciate the time clients tell us to, revert back to us with some feedback. It's really great. You learn a lot and you can capitalize on those learnings for future translations. And that's a way you can build a career with quality, because quality is a key challenge and a key enabler for you to get more and more references. And this is how I ended up working for large companies in different industries. I started out in the IT field, but then I continued in the pharmaceutical business, or I also worked for a large fast food restaurant chain for many years, and it was always for the public affairs and the corporate communications departments, because they knew how my style of working and also the quality of the work I was able to deliver. Another challenge could be translation into your B language. And this is both a challenge and an opportunity, because if you work in the internal communications department or in the public affairs department of a company, you get to translate many press releases, in my case, from English to Spanish. My native language is Spanish. And when I was asked to translate a press release from Spanish into English about a local initiative for the headquarters, I had read so many press releases in English that I already knew what kind of expressions the company would use. So I could adapt my text, the way of saying things in Spanish, to the way of saying things in English, so that I had, a readable, a user-friendly and enjoyable text in English as well.
Can you talk about some of the types of assignments that you do? One that I'm interested in some of the communication I had with you, you talk a little bit about some of your work in crisis management. I'm wondering what it sounds like you kind of got thrust into it early on in your career. I'm wondering what that experience was like and what kind of projects suddenly fell under your purview, and how that has kind of evolved over time, and you have maybe become that much more of an expert and more capable of handling crisis management communication. And that's just one example, but I mean, any particularly noteworthy or interesting projects that you have done in your area?
Yeah, of course. Well, many years ago, I had the chance to work elbow to elbow with the corporate communications manager and the legal department of a large IT company, because they had a public relations crisis. And they had to develop corporate statements and media training for their spokespersons overnight. They were receiving lots of media inquiries, and well, this led to more collaboration with other sectors of the same company, because they were also developing communications for their internal stakeholders, the employees, to keep everyone informed of the company's initiatives. corporate materials in the communications, internal communications and external communications area are generally developed in advance for crisis. Companies try to anticipate any reputation crisis they may have. For instance, anything having to do with sustainability or global warming or, harmful effects of products or, media inquiries or, financial crisis. So these materials are developed well in advance by the communications teams of companies, and they usually require translation. They include media statements, press releases, and question and answer documents, talking points, key messages. So this is all to convey the company's position in order to be better prepared to face a crisis. For instance, when the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, we all know it started to affect Asia first. So I was working as a translator for the internal communications department of an international bank that had subsidiaries in Asia, and they were preparing many months in advance their communication materials for employees. They already had a work from home policy for their employees because they knew that this would potentially become a health emergency globally, not just for one continent. And that is what actually happened. And even though it may seem that there is a bit of improvising in all of this, well, you cannot expect to know about every situation and how it will eventually develop. So different scenarios are developed, and the materials are also adjusted according to the different stakeholders or audiences. Companies have communication toolkits for external stakeholders that include their shareholders, investors, the audience, the communities where they operate, and they also have communication materials for their internal stakeholders, which are the employees, the managers, the unions, perhaps. So this is part of the work of the internal communications departments.
Very interesting. So you're based in Argentina. What have you noticed about differing regional needs and standards for some of the work you do in your specialization?
Yeah, for instance, I have a client that is based in the US and has subsidiaries in Latin America and in Spain. And they translate their materials to Spanish only once. But what they do is to fine-tune them for the region. That is to say, they take into account the regional varieties of Spanish. And this is something that we take into account when we translate into English as well. We usually ask our clients who the target audience is. For instance, if we should use European English or US English. So these are like basic, questions we may ask at the beginning of an assignment. We can also advise our clients to take a gender-neutral perspective. This is particularly useful in Spanish because sometimes they are talking about inclusion and diversity in their workforce or inside their company, and they are not using gender inclusive language. So it looks like a contradiction. So this is what I mean when I say that we can advise our clients and be like their language consultant. We can offer this kind of advice to improve their communications. Another way we can collaborate with clients without translating a document is editing or reviewing their documents. Sometimes their original documents are written by people that are not native speakers of the language, and they need some improvement. So we can contribute these improvements, and in general, clients value this, and this is the way, as I was saying, you can become like a trusted advisor for clients.
You mention gender inclusive language, and I want to ask you a little bit about that, and hoping that I can frame the question in a way that doesn't get us too far into the the details of the Spanish language, which I'm sure we would both enjoy doing, but for the benefit of listeners, I'm just curious, when you broach that when you deal with that topic, I think probably different clients have different expectations and different style guidelines for how you are incorporating gender neutral language in whatever the target language may be. I know there can be a lot of variability in the Spanish language, so I'm curious, like, if you can talk a little bit about that and how you address that aspect of that particular client need of making use of gender neutral language, or using the or doing an assignment in such a way that it is gender neutral.
Well, it's a very interesting question. It's something that we are debating all of the time. There are guidelines that have been published, which are very good, by different universities, even by the United Nations, on writing with a gender perspective in English and in Spanish. And I always refer to them because they are a very useful resource. What I believe is that without twisting the language too much, without making it sound unnatural, we should find in our toolkit, because we have been trained to do so, certain expressions that denote that we are taking a gender inclusive perspective without making the text, too difficult to read, because then we would not be fulfilling the purpose, that is to enhance readability or user friendliness. And of course, we have to take into account the company's guidelines. Some companies already have guidelines. They even have, affinity groups for different, people with different backgrounds or common, interests. And some of them work on these issues, such as inclusiveness and diversity, or also equity, social justice, and the elimination of unconscious bias. That's another important matter we have to pay attention to, particularly now that we have so many tools with artificial intelligence, and we know that artificial intelligence is fed on what humans have been saying and writing. And if those texts are biased, then the results will be biased as well. So it's about having awareness. It's about making a contribution without, without twisting the language, and respecting the language as well, because the Spanish language, and all languages have their rules, and we have to be respectful of those rules, but also try to find resources that will make the texts more friendly to certain, stakeholders and communities.
I appreciate that I was saying gender neutral, but I appreciate that you were using the term gender inclusive, which is that's what I should have been saying. So just to
I think I also use gender neutral. Yeah.
You bring me to my next question, which is you started talking about artificial intelligence and machine translation. Do you have additional thoughts regarding the impacts you see from machine translation and artificial intelligence on your field?
Yes, I have seen the evolution of tools in our profession for many years. I started with a typewriter. We had to, make corrections, the old-fashioned style. And then with the advent of computers, everything was simplified and much better, and our lives become easier. And now with the advent of artificial intelligence, I think it's a fascinating new era that we have to come to grips with. Some translators will resist and others will embrace it, but I believe it's a reality. And, I'm a professor. I'm translation school where I also trained at my alma mater, Lenguas Vivas. And one way to incorporate artificial intelligence into the classroom is through editing or reviewing tasks. And one way to develop skills in our students, aside trying to leave artificial intelligence out of the classroom walls, is to give them writing tasks. So if you can develop these skills, if you can develop the skills to write in an idiomatic way, using perhaps writing guidelines, and if you can develop the skills to edit a text and detect what the problems might be, then we shouldn't be afraid of artificial intelligence tools. Because what we really need is critical thinking. And that is what I try to, that is the skill that I try to build in students. I know students are curious about many different things. They also have a big influence of social media. They can cope with different, priorities and things at the same time. And it's also hard to keep them interested. I usually resort to texts from internal communications to do some tasks in the classroom as well, because the press releases and the statements are good examples of, nicely written texts from real life. And I believe students should have the opportunity to experiment with them. And well, we'll see how artificial intelligence keeps improving, but I believe we still have a very important contribution to make in education and also in translation.
So one last question. What are some of the skills you've developed that feel unique to this specialization?
Okay, soft skills, as I was mentioning, the ability to keep the channel of communication open with your clients, to be able to receive feedback, to anticipate their needs, to negotiate terms or the scope of a project or the deadlines. Also, there is a lot of introspection because you need to understand your own limits. If you have not specialized yet, my advice is to start little by little and try to have someone who perhaps might guide you, like a mentor or someone with more experience. So I would say quality is a key trait of any translator that would like to stay in business and get referrals for new assignments. So also reviewing your translations before handing them in, and making sure your translations are awesome, not just good. That will keep your clients satisfied and they will come back with more.
Well, that's all the questions that I have. Thank you again, Marita, for joining us. It's a pleasure, and an honor to hear about all that you've done and your insights. Really looking forward to sending this episode out.
Thank you very much. And I love staying connected with other professionals. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share.
My pleasure. Thank you again.
You've been listening to Inside Specialization, our series on the what, why, and how of specializing in a specific field of translation or interpreting. Big thanks to everyone involved in the production of this episode. ATA's PD committee developed and coordinated the interview. Mixing and editing was done by Derek Platts. ATA headquarters provided editorial and technical support. Now, if you learned anything new in today's podcast, I bet there's somebody out there who would like to know it too. Don't be stingy. Tell them about us. I've gotten to know so many great podcasts that way. I promise they'll thank you for it. And if you're not an ATA member, listen up. I've been a member for over 20 years. I can honestly say that ATA launched my freelance career, and I've never looked back. Nowadays, the demand for translators and interpreters is at an all-time high, but finding quality work isn't easy. ATA membership can make a difference. And ATA isn't just for translators or interpreters. Individuals, companies, and organizations can become members. We have teachers, professors, hospital administrators, language company owners, technology developers, as well as language companies, universities, hospitals, and government agencies. Go to ATA's website, atanet.org, for details. Or check out past episodes of this podcast where we talk about the benefits of membership and what's currently happening in the association. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Talk to you again soon.